I've been working with EU institutions around linked data in different capacities, designing and delivering training courses, providing advisory services, developing prototypes, guiding linked data projects, and along all that, building a linked data community of practice. This work, as well as the preceding work that I did on enterprise architecture and IT governance, convinced me of the huge untapped potential of linked data. And I don't mean linked open data only, but also linked enterprise data, because there are billions of IT investments spent to solve problems that are practically dissolved when using linked data. This is confirmed by a number of signatories of the recent movement for data centricity. But regardless of the potential, linked data is still marginal even today, when knowledge graphs became so trendy. Linked data, it brings universal approach for naming, meaning, and shaping of information. It was meant to be the second big information revolution after the World Wide Web. It was supposed to complement the web of documents with the web of data so that humans and machines can use the internet as if it's a single database while enjoying the benefits of decentralization. And when you think of it, that's a beautiful balance. That's the balance between autonomy and cohesion, which is important for the survival of any system. As you know, it all started with this email by Tim Berners-Lee in 2006. What is the situation now, 15 years later? The number of open data sets grew significantly. We have 1,492 data sets, and that is a lot. But is it? What part is this of all online data sets? It's much less than 1%. It's much less than 0.005%, in fact. One may think if this is the case, maybe people have a better way to manage data. Maybe they don't need linked data. Well, now in the Corona lockdown, many people needed to buy new monitors. Say you want to ask for all the prices of all 4K monitors below 600. What you'll get is not only wrong answers in the view, but actually most of the online shops will not be represented at all, especially small and medium businesses, which is not only bad information management, it's also not ethical. So now in 2021, we still don't have the worldwide data search. It's not possible. And we could have that with linked data. Inside enterprise, the situation is not any better. Billions are wasted every year due to decisions driven by the application-centric mindset. And I guess by now you're quite fed up with the silo metaphor, so let me try another one. Imagine a world where one can only read what one have written and nothing else. Oh, well, in such a world, people like Agatha Christie, for example, would have been lucky to read 73 or 80 books, but most of the people would have read none. And I think you all agree that this is an absurd world. And yet, we invest billions in our enterprise information landscape to create exactly such a world where most applications read only the data that they have written. We create corporate applications that are big silos where application and data are tightly coupled, where we have hyperlocal identifiers. It's sometimes funny to see people present digital twins, but they're more like analog dolls, not realizing the importance of having URIs for all enterprise entities and relations. And of course, the majority of data models are buried in the physical implementation layer, separate for each information system. What is the result of that? The result of that is high cost of change and high cost of interoperability. And maybe corporations and private sector, they can afford that, but I don't think public sector can continue doing that. That's a waste of taxpayer money. We do not have only big silos, we have also small silos like spreadsheets. They are like plastic bags. They're convenient and multifunctional, yet they pollute the information environment. And I repeat, they're convenient. I also use them. But yeah, you can check out this article, The Tyranny of Convenience, a few years ago in New York Times. And that can also be solved well by linked enterprise data. So that's the first question. Why is linked data still marginal? What can we do to change that? Maybe we need to be patient. The first modern passenger flight happened by Boeing 247 in 1933. That's 30 years after the first flight. So you may think you need 30 years to wait until something which was available as technology to become mainstream. You'll say, well, that was the case before. Now that's not anymore because things accelerated. Well, not really. In 1969, the internet was invented, and then it took 30 years to become mainstream. So if we decide to take this and extrapolate it, then maybe we will have linked data in 2047. If we count that Shackle and the RDF star, the two last important, maybe not last, but really important puzzles of technology stack, semantic technologies, that they appeared in 2017. So we need 30 more years. And then there is nothing to worry about. But in fact, there is. Historically, what happened is RDF, it appeared in 1999, while LPGs in 2009. And yet, for much shorter time, they took bigger market share, not only in terms of how much data is available as property graphs, but also the way the ecosystem is currently developed. You would find much smaller number of stores for RDF than the variety of offerings that are for property graphs. Linked data itself is blessed to be in a position between philosophy, science, and industry. And philosophy don't mean only because ontologies, but also because of, you think like how object is related to resource, the philosophical question of property name and how this technology could be solved by URIs, and of course, ontologies is something quite known. In science as well, it's a well-established research area, semantic web. But this blessing is also a curse, because it so happens now that for business people, it seems that linked data is too IT, and for IT, it's too academic. And it seems that it failed to create a sustainable ecosystem, an ecosystem where you could have vendors and users and developers live in harmony and thrive. Vendors specifically, they were not attracted, probably because it's not easy to make profit using open standards. But this is changing. I know it's controversial, yet Google made a lot of boosts with JSON-LD and RDFA to be supported as standards for encoding linked data in HTML. And recently, although previously only small companies they were involved in that, recently we have big giants entering this ecosystem. Amazon appeared with Neptune that offers RDF service. For developers, they're really drowned in options. It's quite difficult for them, especially for the average web developer. There is no attractive tooling, way too complex for them. The technology stack is mainly on the back end. There's almost nothing on the front end. That is also changing, but slowly. Apart from JSON-LD, we have things like quite a few now offerings like JavaScript RDF libraries, Python libraries, tools like LDFlex that provides accessible linked data patterns for developers for most of the cases. For users, they're quite neglected. They are required to have technical skills because for most publications, they would require Sparkle knowledge. There is not much to be done with natural language query. That is also starting to change. Now there are ways to translate natural language questions into Sparkle, and QAnswer and Freya are two such examples. But we can also see this problem where you wouldn't expect it to be, and that is in the linked open data, with the linked open data publishers. They publish linked data for others to use. but rarely use it themselves. That's why they perceive linked data mainly as a cost, mainly something not really that they have skin in the game, being dependent on it for their daily job. So there is a lot of linked open data, but not much linked enterprise data by the same publishers. And also there is another strange disbalance. A lot of effort are put to publish metadata and not enough on data. It is as if what is offered is like you enter a wine shop in which you can watch the labels, but you cannot try or drink wine. So I asked around to see if it's what others think about it, and I made a survey that I addressed to people that have a lot of experience with linked data. In fact, from the respondents, most of them, they had over 8 years of experience. And number one is, maybe unsurprisingly, too academic. I probably would have put something else, but that was what was confirmed. Then next is little care about end users, failed to attract IT vendors, and too complex web developers. And that suspicion that things are also problematic with linked open data publishers, it was confirmed by quite a number of respondents. Of course, you can also participate if now these results would not influence too much what you. So have you say this is the link, you can survey still open. But these were the 5 things that I supposed were the problems. Of course, I was interested to know others that I have missed that people find equally or even more important. And something interesting happened. After I analyzed all the answers, it seems that with the large majority, most were about the tooling that wasn't available. I was quite surprised to find out, because I was so much used to not having convenient tooling around in data that I never thought it could be otherwise. The next one was around skill set, and the third place was it was too complex. Of course, there were other things that were sort of outside these main clusters, like resolve challenges on authorization entitlement, not enough focus on person-centered graphs, and something I quite subscribe to, IT project holders manage their projects through KPIs, but knowledge management is transverse discipline and can't be seen as a single project. Indeed, what kills many programs for linked data are projects. And there was one answer. So this was around the average the tooling skill set. There was one answer that was an outlier, and I think we should pay a lot of attention to outliers. It was outlier not only with quality of the answer, but also with the amount of things that were said. I will not ask you to read that, but just a few very important points. People don't care about sharing data in proper ways. They don't see the need to integrate data if the main benefit of doing it are more for third parties than for themselves. There are even cases where centralization for a company is actually the attempt to dominate the market, and the example given was Google. Another thing was that RDF star came too late, where property graphs were quite dominant at that time. So why don't we, the way we do with open data, we do not treat the same way if people publish PDF, CSV, or RDF. They have different value. It's realized we have this 5-star deployment scheme for open data. Maybe we need similar ways to distinguish the different value of different ways to manage linked data and to make it available. And that should be not only for linked open data, but also for linked enterprise data. And if people have a way to attract users, if they build stellar applications, if they make it easy and accessible for developers, if they put a lot of data, not just metadata, then apart from the ground level, which is the top level of open data, linked open data, we could start rating different applications in a different way. But even if we don't do that, what is important to start doing to change the whole situation? Well, my suggestions are the following. First, attract developers. make it easy for them to use and create linked data. And Wikidata is one example of that. So when you have a Sparkle query there and you don't even know Sparkle, you can wrap it in JavaScript, Java, Python, and R just right away. It's automated for you. Google, again, did a lot of good job because now the recent Common Crawl Corpus discovered huge growth of the available structured data as linked data in the HTML. Then ask in other tongues. Of course, standards are important. Of course, Sparkle is great. But see, for example, TopRate started, allowed in their tooling, also other vendors, to query not only with Sparkle, with GraphQL. That is much more natural for a lot of front-end developers. And then another company, RDF Ox, they offer management of the graph not only with Sparkle, but also with Datalog. So they use Sparkle for querying and Datalog for reasoning. So ask in other tongues as long as they are standards that they're open and available. That's not the case for property graphs yet. Be inclusive, make data accessible for all kinds of humans. Hesio project was presented, and now I hear that they started experimenting with querying with natural language questions that are translated into Sparkle, and then you can train the way this is performing. And then, last but not least, build an awesome app. Create value, set an example, inspire. It is not enough. It is not enough only to publish linked open data and to invite people to use it in different ways. You should set an example. Remember, Tim Berners-Lee, apart from getting together HTML and HTTP to bring the World Wide Web, he also wrote the browser. An example of public sector for that is the route compatibility check prototype of the European Agency of Railways that was presented a couple of days ago in this conference by Julian Rojas. And I would like to end with the message to linked open data publishers. If you want people to use your linked data, start using linked data yourself. Walk the talk. This might sound counterintuitive, but to be really successful with linked open data, you need to work towards linked enterprise data. So either initiate or support the current efforts to build an enterprise knowledge graph of your enterprise data stores.